What is up, y'all? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to be looking at the Detroit Lions offensive line for the 2020 season. So let's get it started. What is up, everyone? Welcome into another video. And today, like I mentioned, we're focusing on that offensive line, baby. We're looking at trenches, and trenches are super important, especially on the offensive side, because it really makes everything happen. Without a good offensive line, you can't pass the ball. Without a good offensive line, you can't run the ball. And we know how bad we have been at running the football. And ever since Bob Quinn has came to Detroit, that's been one of his focuses, is to fix the offensive line, to give the Detroit Lions a running game, to give Matthew Stafford a running game. We've went 70 straight games without a 100-yard rusher. That's not an okay stat. The Lions have been inconsistent with the running game really since Barry has been a Detroit Lion. And when I say inconsistent, I mean basically bad every season. I don't even think we finished in the top half of running the football in the league since Matthew Stafford has been our quarterback. That's not good. Yes, we need to fix that. And Bob Quinn is hopefully doing that. And last season, I think we saw a lot of improvements, but then all of a sudden comes question marks when guys have to leave in free agency. You cut players. Now all of a sudden you have new players stepping in and you really don't know what to expect. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Now, running the football is super important, and even the offensive linemen know about it. Frank Ragnow said this: "I'm always excited about the thought of running the ball. Obviously, we've added some weapons. It's kind of been an emphasis since I've been here with Coach Patricia. I'm definitely excited to see what we can do this year." The offensive line is super important, and Frank Ragnow, by the way, may be our best offensive lineman. But let's take a look at that offensive line. Let's take a look at what the Lions did this offseason, why it's different from what it was last season. So last season, it was a pretty simple offensive line. Let me go through it. Left tackle, Taylor Dekker. Left guard, Joe Dahl, who rotated with Kenny Wiggins. At center, we had Frank Ragnow. At right guard, we had Graham Glasgow. And at right tackle, we had Rick Wagner. Seems all good, right? Well, that right side of the offensive line got a little bit of a makeover this offseason. The Detroit Lions decided to let Graham Glasgow walk in free agency as he was expected to get $10+ million, which the Lions needed to save to fix other problems with like the defensive tackles position. Really, the defense as a whole had a lot of problems. The Detroit Lions used that money elsewhere. And then they also cut their starting right tackle, Rick Wagner, who, by the way, was probably a good decision. That's one of the things I wanted the Lions to do this offseason, because even though he wasn't completely awful, he was not very good. He probably had the worst season really since the Lions had brought him in when they signed him to a huge deal from the Baltimore Ravens. But he had a really bad last season. He was starting to deal with injuries, and he was getting a little bit older. He ended up with the Green Bay Packers, by the way, as their starting tackle. So we should eat on him. But the Detroit Lions had to make a change, and they decided to go in free agency and sign a new tackle to replace Rick Wagner. Now, they brought in a guy that goes by the name of Big V, because I can't say his full name. Even though y'all type it in the comments, I still can't do it. Big V is the Lions' new offensive lineman. Now, a lot of people look at Big V, and it's really easy to say, well, he's not good because he wasn't a starter. But you have to look a little bit deeper than that. I actually have a video just on Big V. So if you want to see that video, check it out. We break him down by film, everything. It's a good video, man. Y'all should watch. He's played in a lot of snaps. In 2016, he played in over 400 snaps, which was 37% of their snaps. Okay, now that was his first season. 2017, 73% of their snaps in 2017, which was actually their Super Bowl run. He started in the final 10 games after an injury. He played in the NFC Championship game, go win against guys like Everson Griffin, where he stepped up big time. He played in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, where they won the Super Bowl, and 73% of snaps, over 800 snaps, which is actually more snaps than what Rick Wagner played last season. But to sum it up pretty quickly, he has been a backup offensive lineman for most of his career. But you have to keep in mind that at the tackle position, he's been behind two of the best tackles in the league years on end. And what's great about Big V is not only is he a versatile player that can play both tackle positions, which people bring up all the time, he can also play the guard position. He can play pretty much every position. He's really well known for his run blocking ability, and that's why it looked like he'd be more successful as a guard. However, he was definitely more successful as an offensive tackle. So Big V is now with the Detroit Lions, and a lot of people are looking at him saying, hey, this guy's going to be a big problem. Get it? Because, Big V, big problem. I did a couple of those jokes in this video, so all right. I don't know why I'm doing this. Okay, enjoy the rest. But he's actually a pretty solid player, and when he's had to step in, he's gotten better and better. He's played in some really big games. He actually was the starting left tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles on the road to their Super Bowl run. Big V has been really big for the Philadelphia Eagles, drafted in the 5th round, but now he's with the Detroit Lions. He got signed to a huge deal, 5 years, $45 million, and it says opportunity to prove that he is a starter in this league. But at the right guard position, what the heck did the Lions do? They just let Graham Glasgow walk, one of the most versatile interior offensive linemen in the league, one of the Lions' most consistent offensive linemen, and you just let him walk? Well, the Detroit Lions went a little bit different. Instead of spending money in free agency, they took back-to-back drafted offensive linemen. They drafted back-to-back guards in the 2020 NFL Draft. In the third round, they traded up on day number 2 to select Jonah Jackson, a pass-protecting guard out of Ohio State and out of Rutgers. And then in round 4, day 3, Detroit Lions traded back and selected Logan Stenberg, the guard out of Kentucky, Mr. Nasty himself. So the Detroit Lions made an effort to replace that position by drafting back-to-back guards. And one of those guards obviously won't start because there's only 5 offensive line positions. But Detroit Lions definitely made an emphasis to fix that position just a little bit differently. And you always know with rookie offensive linemen, you don't know what to expect. So getting 2 of them, hopefully at least one of them can pan out. Let's look at that projected offensive line for the 2020 season and look at each player individually. Starting off at the left tackle position, the Detroit Lions have returning Taylor Dekker, who is now on the final year of his deal, and he was playing for a new contract extension, and he needs to continue to get better and ball out the season. He was a little bit inconsistent back in 2017, but every year he's been in the league, he's seemingly gotten better and better. This was Bob Quinn's first draft pick. He was a first-round pick number 16 out of Ohio State. He's gotten better every single year. Early in his career, I would say there's a lot of hiccups. 2017, some injuries. But last season, he wasn't that bad. And I think he's looked at as a lot worse than what he really was. Last season, just by the numbers, he played in over 1,000 snaps. He had 7 sacks allowed, which was tied for 10th. And he had 10 penalties, which was tied for 14th. Not bad, really not bad. And when you watch him, sometimes he'll give up some pressure, but he seemingly gets better and better. And he's a pretty athletic left tackle from what I've seen. I do think he starts his left tackle position once again. I don't think anybody takes that from him. And he's a very important position as Matthew Stafford's blind side. But the question is, will he be the future left tackle of the Detroit Lions? Will he earn a contract extension? We'll have to wait and see, but he will be the starter at LT for the 2020 season. Moving on to the left guard position. Last year, the Detroit Lions had Joe Dahl starting at left guard. They also rotated him in with Kenny Wiggins. Now, Joe Dahl did play in about 75% of the snaps, but Kenny Wiggins did have a little bit of a role there. However, like I mentioned, the Detroit Lions drafted back-to-back guards, which could mean you could have 2 starting rookie guard at left guard and at right guard, which would be crazy. However, I don't see that happening right away. I think Joe Dahl does start at the left guard position, as he's been a pretty solid player for us. However, I do think at some point in the year, we could definitely see Logan Stenberg step into that role, because Logan Stenberg's a beast. He's a monster. That's the guy I want protecting Stafford. That's the guy I want run blocking. However, he's just not polished. He has a lot of penalty issues and a lot of concerns with grabbiness and getting holding calls. So if he can clean some of that up, become more disciplined, he could easily be the starter at the left guard position. I wouldn't be shocked if he was day 1. However, I do think it starts with Joe Dahl, maybe a small little rotation for a guy like Logan Stenberg. Maybe at some point he takes over that role, but I do think it is Joe Dahl to start the season. So left side is still the same and still is the center position. We will have Frank Ragnow back to the center position, arguably our best offensive lineman, who last season was a beast. Tied for 8th in penalties and tied for 8th in sacks allowed. This dude was a monster last season, and he's so young, it's crazy. Going into his 3rd year, the former Arkansas Razorback can play both guard and center, but ever since he's moved back to center, he's been even better. This is the kind of player you want in your inside. This is the kind of guy that you want your offensive line to kind of base around. This guy is the future of the Detroit Lions offensive line. He is a monster, and he gets better and better. He has the potential to be one of the best offensive linemen at some point in this league. Now moving over to the right side where all the question marks sit. At right guard, I think Jonah Jackson will start. Now, it could be Logan Stenberg. Last season, Jonah Jackson played a lot more left guard than right guard for Ohio State, but back when Jonah Jackson was early in his career as a freshman with Rutgers, he did play right guard. He can play both positions. He's only allowed 1 sack in over 1,000 snaps. His numbers are great. He's a pass protector, and he's played in 2 different schools and been successful at both. Now, some people think it's impressive that he was able to go from Rutgers to Ohio State and still be a really good offensive lineman. To me, it's impressive that he was able to be a great offensive lineman at Rutgers playing against Big Ten opponents, because his teammates probably weren't as good as Ohio State offensive linemen. So with that being said, I think the right guard position is going to be held down by a rookie, and I have a lot of confidence in Jonah Jackson. Graham Glasgow was also a 3rd round pick, and Bob Quinn said he saw a lot of the same things. I think he takes over that role, and I think he does pretty well. And then finally, moving at the right tackle position, the other tackle position, which we mentioned before, is Big V. I think Big V starts at that tackle position. I think, he got paid that money for a reason. The Lions have confidence in him. But again, we do have some solid backups if we had to, like Terrell Crosby, possibly Dan Skipper if he makes the team. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. When you pay a guy that kind of money, and the guards that we drafted, see, if the Lions would have drafted tackles or something, I could have saw him play guard. But since you drafted both guards and no tackles, I think that's the only place he fits in, unless him and Taylor Dekker switch, which would be kind of weird. He starts at right tackle to me, Big V, and I think he makes a name for himself as a starter in this league. So boom, that is the Lions' projected offensive line for the 2020 season. I would say there's a couple of new pieces, 2 to 3 new pieces on that offensive line, potentially 3 starters. I think at least 2 right away, and at some point Logan Stenberg could take over. I love what the Lions did this offseason, bringing new players, and they replaced them pretty well, way better than I thought they would once they lost Graham Glasgow. But I think they had a huge improvement at the right tackle position, and people need to realize this guy's going to be a beast. Check out the Big V video. So that is the Lions offensive line overview. Let me hear your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.